Welcome to another session of the mailbag. Remember, these are questions and comments you guys leave on the channel. I do my humble best to answer, or let somebody else answer them. But before we get started, here are the normal parish notices. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button. If you want to be notified when I put new content to the channel, press the bell icon. If you want to support the production of videos on the channel, head over to Patreon. That's www.patreon.com/themusictechguy. The address is somewhere down here. And in these troubled times of COVID-19 and coronavirus, stay at home, stay safe, and wash those pinkies. And now to the mailbag. And the first one for this week comes from Pratik Kaur. He writes, "Hi there, I've been trying to connect my Edirol M16DX to my new MacBook Pro 16-inch Thunderbolt 3 via an Apple adapter, but to no avail. I understand this audio interface has been discontinued, which explains the reason why there are no updated drivers on the website which are compatible with Catalina. I have managed to install an older version of the driver, but it's not recognized by my device. Not sure if it's a USB to Thunderbolt issue or a driver issue. When I use the same adapter and USB cable to my digital piano to the Mac, it works. Any help or advice would be greatly appreciated. Cheers." Now you've stumbled on one of my pet grumbles, if you like, and it is a grumble. I really sort of go off my soapbox on some stuff around this. Anyway, this was in response to the Roland upgrading the drivers to Catalina version 10.15 I did back at the beginning of the year in January 2020, and what really annoys me about this sort of stuff is that you have a perfectly serviceable piece of equipment that the manufacturer has decided to discontinue, and because they've decided to discontinue it, they're no longer supporting that equipment when the computing equipment that it needs to plug into changes. So as we roll through new versions of Windows and Mac OS and iOS and various other platforms, the drivers stop being supported by the manufacturer. And this really annoys me. And I think you may have an instance of this going on here. Now, I know personal experience with my Mac, which is sitting behind me here, that going from 12 to 13 and from 14 to 15 in the operating system world has caused a whole heap of pain to some of the stuff that I have interfaced with it when I'm either recording, making music, or doing other stuff. So, you know, other bits, like I have a scanning interface that plugs into this, and that between 12 and 13 completely went doolally until the manufacturer issued brand new drivers for it. So it is possible that you've fallen foul of that issue, and until the manufacturer issues some new drivers that are Catalina enabled, you may well be stuffed. And I do apologize for that, but it is one of the biggest problems. Now, so where I would start looking, the first thing I would look at is in version 13 of Mac OS, Apple changed the way the security around third-party drivers works. And it is possible, I'm not saying it is the problem, but it is possible that you have loaded the driver and you have not seen the pop-up message when the driver was loaded that actually said the driver is blocked by the OS. And what you need to do is you need to effectively go into system preferences and security and then unblock the driver. Now, I have a video, I think it was the Catalina upgrade video, and I will put a link to that video in this video so you can go and have a look at that, and it shows you exactly how to get in to unblock the driver. Now, if that is the case, if it's just simply a case of the driver is blocked, you may be able to get away with this. Part of me says I want to say that is the problem, but I don't know. Now, looking back at the Roland website for the Edirol, what I did notice is that Roland stopped supporting the Edirol at Mac version 09. So it didn't actually get past 10. So that's quite a few versions ago that actually Apple or Roland stopped supporting this particular interface with the Macintosh. Macintosh, that's an old word, isn't it? I can't believe I just said that. With the Mac. So it could be that the changes that have been made to the OS between 9 and 15 are just snookering you. And that is possibly where I think the issue is. I don't think the issue is with the USB interface and the fact that on the new Macs they've now changed to the USB-C format. I don't think that is the issue. I think probably the issue is more something to do with the fact that your drivers, given the fact that they were issued in 09, are actually 32-bit drivers, and as of Catalina, all 32-bit drivers have all support for 32-bit drivers has been completely dropped. So unless your driver is a 64-bit driver or has a way of impersonating a 64-bit driver on Catalina, it is not going to work at all. The other thing I would look at, just to see if you can see any clue that this is going on, is if you go to the System Information tool, click the search icon in the top right-hand bar, type System Information, start again. So if you go to the System Information tool, you get there by clicking the search icon in the top bar of your Mac, type in System Information, it will come up in the search results, click on it, and then if you scroll down to the section that says Software and check the sections that say Legacy Software and Disabled Software and see if your drivers pop up in there, because that could give you a very good clue that that's what's going on. The other thing I'd look through is the extensions section and see if you can spot your driver in there. Now, Roland will normally have the drivers, they will come up as Roland Corporation, but the name might be not, so you might have to sort of click through each one of the drivers you've got loaded until you find the relevant Roland one. But that obviously is a bit of a tiresome process, but it will give you a clue of what's going on. But I suspect here that the problem is 32-bit over 64-bit. I probably lay money that's where the issue is. Finally, if all else fails, drop back to Windows because there is support for Windows 10 still. Right, the next one comes from Elk Dellen. Nice video. Does anyone know why there are no pirate ROM copy cards? Imagine the 808, 909, 707, CR78 in one brand new ROM card. This was in response to sort of the Roland R-8 What's Inside the Box video I did in February 2020. And you know what? That's a good question. That really is a good question. Now, I had a card that didn't work, and no matter what I did, it wasn't going to work. So I actually sort of opened the card up. Just to be nosy about it. I wish I'd put it on camera, actually, but I didn't have any cameras around when I did it. But if you look inside these non-volatile cards, effectively all they are is an EEPROM. So there's an EEPROM chip with the sounds burned into them, and I'm sure, to be honest, if there was an enterprise and electronics engineer, could design a new version of the card. Now, what somebody told me, and I don't know how much truth there is, but certain EEPROMs that came out in the 80s only had a serviceable life of about 30 years, depending on how they were treated. So, most of my EEPROM, or most of my non-volatile cards still work, and they're all protected and sitting in the cases and what have you. But I guess depending on where these things have been stored, how they've been stored, whether they're being exposed to sort of sunlight and all this sort of stuff, and heat could affect whether these EEPROMs retain the data or not. But at the end of the day, that's all this thing is an EEPROM. It's data burned into the chip. So I suspect somebody who is a little bit entrepreneurial could quite easily spin up a line of these cards for various machines, be it Roland machines, Korg machines, Yamaha machines, and they could, burn these things, take decent samples, get samples made, take them, burn them, and then resell them. There is a market there. There's definitely a market there. How big a market, I don't know, but there's definitely a market. And if you're talking about some sort of cottage industry, I suspect that a sort of 30 or probably more like 50 to 100, I suppose, but 50 to 100 pounds, people would buy these sort of cards, brand new cards that are booked. Now, the user came back and said gave me a link to a company out in California that's actually made a RAM card for the Yamaha DX and the Roland D50, and effectively you can store on this RAM card 100 sound banks. And you just scroll up and down through the memory. So start at sound bank 0 and it goes up to sound bank 99. And you can put effectively the content of an entire card onto that sound bank card. And effectively it powers itself off the keyboard. So every time you plug it into the keyboard, I suspect it takes some power and it burns the sound waves, etc., into the card. And he suggested maybe that company could do it, and I would imagine that company could do it. The bottom line is, I'm not an electronics engineer. I can see how it could work. Definitely probably could provide the samples as well for a lot of this stuff. But at the end of the day, it's sort of bringing the whole package together into a format that can be marketed, can be manufactured and marketed, and there is a profit in it for somebody. So we'll just have to see and watch this space, I guess. I am the world's worst with names, you know that. This one comes from Mary-Ann Oz Zapeta. And it says, do you have the SYSEX files from the original RAM banks 1 and 2 on a FB-01? I can't find them anywhere. This was in response to the FB-01, the fabled FB-01 demo that I did way back in January 2016. Now, unlike many of the instruments around this time, the FB-01 actually has the samples for sound banks 1 and 2 already built into it. And when you do a factory reset, it puts those sound banks back to factory. Now, the way it does that effectively is sound banks 1 and 2 were, I believe, copies, and I can't remember straight off the top of my head, but I think sound banks 1 and 2 were copies of 3 and 4. So all they do is they copy 3 into 1 and 4 into 2 and job done. So if you perform the factory reset, and there is a video on the channel that shows you how to perform the factory reset on an FB-01, it will effectively take 3 and 4 and it'll copy them back into 1 and 2 and you're back to factory presets. And that is probably the reason why you can't find the factory resets, the factory RAM banks 1 and 2 in SYSEX files, because there's no need for them if you've got an FB-01. Hopefully that's answered that one. And the last one for this section of mailbag. James Unwin. Great video, mate. Do you know if saved patterns will be lost after the update? Cheers, James. So this is in response to the Behringer RD update I did in February 2020. And as far as I can see from having done an update, it doesn't lose anything that's in the songs pattern or settings data when you do a firmware update. So when you do a firmware update, everything seems to stay in place, as far as I can see. However, I will caveat that, and the reason I will caveat that is that in order to instigate some of the new functionality, quite often you have to do a factory reset. Now, when I did the last update on my RD-8, and I've only had my RD-8 4 months. When I did mine, okay, I had very limited data in my RD-8, but the data came across. And I didn't have to do a factory reset to invoke any of the new functionality. However, I'm not saying that might not happen going forward, and also depending on where your RD-8 is. So I bought my RD-8 at Christmas, so I can't remember what version of OS firmware I was on at the point in time, but I've now moved up to the current version of firmware that's in release. But say, for example, you were slightly further back, you bought one of the early versions that had an older version of firmware on it, then it is very possible you might have to do a factory reset. So in order to do it, my advice is, even though I don't think it's going to affect it, my advice would still be to back it up. So back the data up, back the songs, the patterns, and the settings up. Do the update. If it requires a factory reset, do the factory reset, and then load it all back on. Built on braces.